Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's sufficiently caffeinated. This slide has the Wi-Fi, hashtag, session, QA, etc. I'll leave that up a moment. So welcome to Less Code, More Impact. Today we're going to explore a few methods for ensuring that we know what the right thing to build is before we go and start building it. We're going to keep the user at the center of everything we do, and we're going to talk about and work through an iterative process. All concepts I'm sure you've heard before, but we're going to do this workshop style, so we're all going to get to work through it together. One quick note, on a bunch of the chairs in the center, we have sketch tablets, mobile sketch tablets, and mechanical pencils. Some of the ones on the outside didn't get it, but my colleague Michael here will go around and hand out. So you won't need it till a little bit later, but if you don't have a pencil and a sketch pad, just raise your hand and Michael will be able to help you out with that. All right, so as Aaron mentioned, I'm Peter Fleming. I'm the head of user experience and design at Chariot Solutions. Chariot Solutions, if you don't know, is a local design and development consultancy, as well as a sponsor and the organizer of this event. That's my LinkedIn up there. I encourage everybody to go ahead and connect with me if you like what you see here and want to continue the conversation. So let's start with just a couple of questions for you guys. Show of hands. Has anybody ever conducted or even just participated in any sort of user experience? Maybe you didn't run it, but you watched or you were part of the, all right, that's great. That's the majority of the room. That's good to see. How many here have ever created any sort of a low resolution prototype? So I'm not talking about a coding prototype, but paper prototypes, maybe a sketch on a whiteboard, things like that. All right. Again, really good. And then third, how many people have sat with real users with those types of prototypes and watched them use it, saw how they reacted to it? That's where it kind of drops off a little bit, right? And that's what we're going to focus on at the end of this, because that's where the real gold is seeing how users respond to our ideas when they're in that low resolution format. All right, so the plan for today is we're going to do three things. We've got a jam-packed hour. The first is we're going to do proper discovery, right? So a lot of companies, organizations, you may have experienced this, feel like research takes too long and it's going to set the project back too far. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be long and drawn out, and it doesn't have to be expensive. So we're going to experience a very sped up guerrilla version of research. Next, we're going to get into prototyping. So we're going to use our tablets there, sketch pads and pencils, and we're going to prototype through something. I'll, of course, give you the guidance of what we're working on, get our ideas out of our heads, and then we're going to do some validating. That's where the real fun is going to be. We're going to work together in pairs, and we're going to validate the sketches, the designs that we come up with. Get some real user feedback. Again, that doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. We'll see what a guerrilla version looks like of that. So one word, one theme you will hear from me a lot today is this idea of hypothesis. Everything that we design or develop essentially is a hypothesis, right? We don't know with absolute certainty that it's the right thing. So we may as well base those guesses on some feedbacks from some real users, what they're looking for, what they need, and we may as well do it in the cheapest, fastest way possible, right? Do low resolution, learn some things, move up a resolution, learn some things. That way we're testing those hypotheses as we go along. So the challenge that we're going to be working through today, the theme of the night is we're designing an app to help senior citizens manage their medications, okay? And you all have been hired to head up that project. So not just the technical aspects of it, but you're also the designers as well as the product owners. Essentially, you've all been promoted to CEO for the day. So we've got a room full of CEOs here. What could possibly go wrong? So real quick, so thinking about the theme, which is, helping senior citizens manage their medications, everybody just take a couple of minutes, we're going to take 30 seconds, and just jot down a couple ideas. You can use the sketch pad and the pencil there. Just write down a couple of features that you think would be in an app, a mobile app that helps seniors manage their medication. Just a couple of things that app should do. And we're not sketching yet. This is just a bullet list or jot down with text what they need to do. If you don't have a sketch pad, there's plenty around in the seats here, sketch pad and pencil. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you came up with similar features, right? Raise your hand if you wrote down something along the lines of allow the user to add a medication to the application. Anybody have anything like add a medication? Yeah, at least half. What about set schedules? Scheduling, a lot of them, okay? And then thirdly, what about some sort of a way to remind the user when it's time to take the medications, okay? Right, so you might be thinking, the whole room came up with the same features for this app. Why do we even need research? We know what we need to build. Let's just start building. We'll save ourselves tons of research money, right? But that's exactly why I picked this challenge, okay? In the UX world, one of the principles we live by is you are not the user, okay? My guess is that this woman has a completely different relationship with technology than most of the people in this room, right? I say most. We all take medications, right? But the way we take medications and the amount of medications that we take is probably vastly different from senior citizens, right? As a matter of fact, this kind of backfires on us. The fact that we have some knowledge about medications and taking medications and scheduling medications actually works against us because we all have biases, right? When we're designing or developing, whether we do it on a conscious level or not, we're thinking about how we would build that app or how that app would work best for us. And we are not the user. Okay, our target senior citizens, they may have many medications. They typically are not as tech savvy, although I've met a few. They can have poor eyesight, not as fine motor skills. They could have a reduction in cognitive abilities, right? Not many of us, maybe that guy back there, but for the most part, I think we're all pretty good in the cognitive ability area. Unfortunately, too many organizations plan their roadmap this way, like we just did. They sit around and they go, oh, here's a list of features. That all makes sense to all of us. Let's start building. I'm sure you guys have probably seen that. Has anybody ever worked in an organization where whatever the boss says goes, right? The boss knows best? Only that guy, huh? Is your boss here? And also, have you ever worked really hard on a product? Maybe you spent 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, whatever, and then it gets out there and it's not beloved by the user audience like you thought it was going to be, right? Yeah, we've all been there. So today we're going to take a little bit of a different route. We're going to set aside our own personal assumptions. We're going to listen to users, and then we're going to sketch some ideas and get it in front of those users. So we're going to start with the discovery process. Right? The first thing we want to do is make sure that we understand the challenge. I'm sure you guys have all heard some variation of the famous saying, usually attributed to Albert Einstein, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and 5 minutes solving it, right? Might be a little bit hyperbolic, but it really drives home that notion that it doesn't matter how good you build something if you built it wrong. So we are going to listen to and observe our users, right? The foundation upon which our products are built, what the users need, what the users want, what delights them, what frustrates them. We need to learn to read between the lines, right? Not just listen to what they're saying or watch what they're doing, but also what does that really mean? Users typically don't know what they don't know, so that's where the innovation lies in those latent needs, things that would really wow them, but they don't know how to articulate it. We find those things by listening and watching and reading between the lines. This is the due diligence that pays dividends in the end. This is the ounce of prevention, if you will, or the 55 minutes that Einstein was talking about. Okay, step one is usually some sort of a conversation. We listen to the target audience, right? This analogy might sound familiar if anybody did the AR feature on the poster outside, but you wouldn't make a pizza for somebody without asking them what they want on it. So why do so many software companies build software without truly understanding what the users want? And at this point when we're listening, we're not digging in, we're not coming up with solutions yet. That's probably the hardest part about this, is that we are all builders. We love to build things. We love to solve problems. That's what we do. But we need to set that aside. When you're in the discovery mode and you're listening to users, you've got to keep pushing the solutioning, keep that at bay, and just soak it all in and listen, listen, listen. In this instance, we just chatted with some senior citizens, with the target audience, and these are some things they said. Some pills are at a set time and some are every 4 hours. I get confused about what to take and when. Right now I use a pill box to organize my meds. I often miss my medication time, and my son calls me every day to check if I've taken all my meds, right? So there's a couple of themes that are emerging. Scheduling is a big one here. Some pills are at a set time, some are every 4 hours, so that really shows that the flexibility that's needed in the scheduling portion of the app. Another theme is missing doses. It's a huge problem out there, senior citizens missing doses, and then do they take 2 doses next time? Do they just skip that dose? That's one of their biggest concerns. So that's listening. The other aspect is observing, right? We find people who have similar apps, or we find people who need this, and we bring apps to them. We meet them in person, and we observe them. This actually, by the way, as discovery, as research goes, this is the gold standard for me. I will take observing 3 people over 2,000 questionnaires, because when you observe people and you see how they act and what they get tripped up on and what they love and what they're surprised by, that is something that you'll never get from a survey, and it's even a little bit hard to get from interviews. So whenever possible, do the observation. So we meet with the person, we see what they love, we see how they get tripped up, we see what frustrates them, we learn how to use it, how they use it. Typically we'll start by giving them a task to complete. So we'll give them the app, the interface, and we'll say, hey, add a medication, add such and such medication and schedule it for blah, blah, blah. And we'll watch them complete that task and we'll see how it goes. So when we did that, here are some of the things we heard. How am I supposed to read this teeny tiny text? I can't figure out how to add a new medication. If I don't see the first reminder, it should bug me again. What is a button? I just click around until it works. And my personal favorite, this fiddly app keeps screwing up when I try to add new medication. I looked up fiddly. It means overcomplicated in senior speak. So there you have it. You've seen what they say in interviews. You've seen what they say during observations and what we've picked up. That's it right from the source, right? Those are your users, and that's what they say. Those are their problems. So let's think about this for a second. Everybody think back for a second to the things you wrote on the paper. We all nailed the features pretty much, right? They're fairly obvious. But what we learned in the interviews and the observations really filled in the lines, right? We got a much better feel for the people and their problems. My guess is if you had designed those features back then when you came up with the ideas and you designed them now based on these things, they're going to be 2 totally different apps. So now we're going to jump into sketching, right? We have a good idea about what the needs and the desires are of the target audience. Next is to start coming up with ideas to generate our hypothesis or our hypotheses. Why are we starting with pencils? Hello? Okay, good. So why are we starting with pencils? Why are we starting low resolution? A number of reasons. They're easy to discard, right? You don't get attached. It's easier to hear that it was a bad idea. Nobody likes working 9 months on something and then somebody telling you your baby is ugly. But if you've spent 10 minutes or even a day on something and somebody tells you it missed the mark, it's a lot easier to hear. Encourages experimentation and therefore creativity. So if you had to start with a polished product, you're likely going to hedge. You're likely going to play it safe because you have to go for polish the first time, and it's likely that you feel the pressure to make it right, so you're going to be less adventurous. So sketching on paper allows you to be a lot more adventurous. It removes the burden of having to be right. Right? I guess we've probably all been in this situation where you've disagreed with somebody, right? Anybody ever disagreed with somebody about how to do something? Nobody. Disagreements happen all the time. You can spend hours and days and meetings and swirl all to come to a conclusion that nobody's really happy with, or you can get out the pencils, sketch something, sketch 2 things, run it by some users, and have your answer that day, right? And then everybody can use pencils and scissors. That means anybody can be part of the process. The designers, the developers, QA, product people, you can bring the customers in some situations and have them help you sketch. That levels the playing field and takes the tool out of the equation. All right, so we're going to get to sketching, okay? I hear a lot of, but I'm not an artist. But if you can draw basic shapes and write text, then you can do the type of sketching that we need to do here today, right? It's not about drawing pretty pictures. It's about getting your ideas out of your head in a simple way that we can convey them to others. All right, so I'm going to run down how it's going to work, and then I'll show you a quick demo. Everybody's going to sketch we're going to have about 10 minutes, give or take, to sketch. I'm going to put 2 tasks up on the screen, 2 use cases. There are a couple of the use cases that I mentioned earlier that most of you agreed you had written down as well. Okay, I'm going to put those up on the screen. You can pick one, and then you're going to demo that. So just to help put everybody at ease and to set the expectations, I'm going to do some live sketching here. Now, hopefully your sketching is going to be a lot better than my sketching on a trackpad up here. So my app, of course, has a home screen, right? It's got a hamburger menu because it's 10 years ago. It's got a picture up here of a really happy person because they love using my app. And it's got a button which allows you to foo. What happens when you click the foo button, you ask? So glad you asked. You go to foo page. Right? And the foo page is a very simple form. Not that simple. Right? It's got a text entry field. It's got a drop down. It's got a go button because it's 15 years ago. It's got one of these here. It's got a little question mark icon. Now, when you tap on that question mark icon, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get a dialog box. It's going to tell you some stuff with an OK button, and then, I'm going to shade out the background, right? So that's the idea. It's that simple. Boxes, text, and shapes. The important thing to remember as you're drawing, though, is I'm going to tell you later, when we're testing these things, we're not testing screens, we're testing flows. So it's important to do things like when you have a button, that button needs a place to go, right? When I click on this foo button, I go here. When I clicked on this, I go here. What happens when I click on this drop-down menu? Well, maybe I need to draw the what goes in that drop-down menu. And I didn't bring scissors here today because I don't know you all that well. But You could tear it out, and then you could do an overlay of what that looks like. So just remember to think through entire flows when you're designing for your use case. So again, we're aiming for at least 3 screens. The more, the better, right? Anything on your UI, if it's there and it's tappable or clickable or swipeable or whatever it is, you should try to design what that does. If you have time, you can explore multiple options. You'll be surprised at how much you can get done, even in 10 minutes. And then, don't be afraid to crumple up your paper and start over if something's not working right. Again, one of the benefits of pencil and paper. All right. So here are the 2 use cases. Now, don't start sketching yet, because I have one more thing I want to show you after I explain these. Adding and scheduling medication, right? How does that happen? Or getting and responding to reminders. How does it look when I get a reminder, and then how do I interact with that reminder, and what happens? I would strongly encourage you, though. I took all the notes from both the interviews and the observation, and I've put them up here again because I want you to quickly read through these. Maybe you jot a couple of down that really resonate with you on your paper, so that as you're designing these screens, you're making sure you're putting the customer's voice in the application. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? As you're sketching, I will walk around, as will my colleague Michael. If you have any questions, just raise your hand, and we're happy to help steer you if we can. All righty, if there's no questions, let's get going. Okay, we're about halfway through. You still have time. I just want to throw a couple of reminders out there. One, if you haven't been rereading the quotes, now's a good time to reread them. Again, see if any of those inspire you to change anything you've done or add anything to your UI. Think about, are there buttons that you've drawn on your UI that don't go anywhere yet? What do those do? Think about form fields, like the drop-down example I gave before. What happens if they click that drop-down? And remember to think of these as flows. They're not just screens, but your users, when they test them, they're going to be going through the flows, pretending to click, pretending to swipe, whatever the action is. And if you're doing really well on time, feel free to either explore the other question, the other use case, or an alternate version of whichever one you're working on. All right. Well done. All right, so at this point, we've done a number of things. We have learned about the needs of our users right from our users. We have determined a couple of tasks that are really important to them. And then on top of just determining the tasks from the users, we got all the lines colored in with the types of things that are meaningful to them or that frustrate them. And then we sketched a bunch of ideas based off of those learnings, right? So the next step is getting those ideas in front of users so we can find out if we've hit the mark or missed it wildly. This is the validation. We're going to test our hypotheses, okay? Remember that these sketches that we have are just a very low resolution first iteration of a hypothesis. This is what we think will solve the problems that we have uncovered, right? We've invested a very low amount of time and a very low amount of money to get at the truth here. And since we have a physical artifact in front of us now, we can focus on observation. Remember I told you about that gold standard? Watching users use something is much better than just verbally talking, trying to convey concepts, and then trying to understand their reaction to concepts is all very conceptual. So having that physical artifact allows us to do the observation. So validating. Okay, so if you paid attention during one slide during this presentation, it's probably this one because I got to lay a bunch of guidelines down and things. So this would be the place to do it. So first off, we're going to do this in pairs. So let's just take a minute and shake hands with the person closest to you that you do not know. We're picking people that we do not know because that's real life. And Why not meet someone new? All right. You might want to, if you're in different rows, you might want to swap and sit next to each other real quick. It might make it easier. All right, now, out of our newfound friendships, actually, real quick, raise your hand if you don't have a partner. Did anybody not, you don't have one? Is there another person without a partner? Then you could just join a group and make it 3. We can work with that. Oh, there's somebody back here. Here you go, sir. There you go. Friendships are born. All right, so would one person from each pair raise your hand? Doesn't matter who. Fight over it if you want. Okay. So the person that just raised their hand, you are what we're going to call the facilitator for the first half. We're going to do both ways, right? But to start off, you're the facilitator. And just so you know, you are no longer human. You are now software. Okay? That's an important distinction. And this is going to be really hard, maybe the hardest thing you do all day long, to try to fight your instincts of being a human being. While you're doing the facilitating, you are not a human being, you are software. You will be showing them, or they will be holding your design, right? If you're the facilitator, they're using your design. When they click on a button, you go beep, boop, 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 and move the right page into place. The noises are optional, but I think it will keep it fun. Don't answer any questions. You're not allowed to help them. You're not allowed to pick up your prototype and run out of the room because they're stupid idiots that can't figure out your brilliant design. You're not allowed to do anything except react to the way they interact with your prototype. Okay? Once they complete the task, right, you're going to give them the task that you designed. We're going to tell them what it is. And then once they complete that task, then you can have a discussion. What did you like? What you didn't like, etc. But you have to hold that until they've either completed the task or gotten really frustrated and gotten mad that they couldn't complete the task. When one of those two things happen, then you're free to talk. I guarantee at least half of you are going to break this rule and talk. I'm challenging you. All right, so would the other person in the group raise your hand? Congratulations, you are humans. You will have to channel your inner senior citizen though, okay? So try to think like the target audience. Obviously in an ideal world, we're testing these prototypes with the target audience. You're going to attempt to complete the task, right? They're going to tell you what the task is, and then you're going to push buttons and swipe and do whatever you think it is that you need to do to complete whatever that task is, and we'll see if you can do it. Your number one rule, the number one rule for computers is to not talk. The number one rule for those that are doing the testing is to talk out loud, right? Because that way your facilitator is soaking up. So you're gonna, let me go to the demo here. I'm gonna now pretend like I am the person testing this prototype, okay? You ready? And scene. Oh, I see a home page here. I see a happy person. This looks like a button for foo. I love foo. I'm gonna click that and then beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, boop. This one comes in front of me. This looks like a form. I wonder what happens when I click. See how I'm talking out loud? That's going to be hugely helpful. That way the person doesn't have to guess at what you're frustrated by or what you think something is when it really isn't that. So computers, no talking. Testers, lots of talking. And remember, they're not allowed to talk, so don't ask them questions. They are not humans. For a little while. Okay, and again, once the task portion is done, then you can conversate at will. So I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes, and then I'll come back on and I'll tell you to switch, right? And you'll switch roles. Anybody have any questions before we jump in? Okay, so facilitators, your last act before becoming a computer and shutting the heck up is to tell your user, tell your tester what their task is. It's probably one of these. If you did a slight variation, whatever you designed, say, give them a task. Say, hey user, please show me how you would add and schedule a medication, all right? So if there's no questions, go ahead. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. All right, let's go ahead and switch, everybody. If you haven't already, switch. Remember, the facilitators are computers and not allowed to talk. I see a lot of two-way talking out there. Awesome job, everybody. Congratulations. We are well on our way to a world full of happy seniors now, I am sure. Did everybody find that useful? Do you think it felt good, like learning from users, sketching some stuff, getting some feedback? I see a lot of head nodding. That's what I'm looking for. Terrible. Okay. My first heckler. Be really, really honest here, okay? Raise your hand if your user was able to get through the task, your design, without help from the computer. Did anybody user actually complete adding a medication or getting whatever it was? Raise your hand. High and proud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Imagine if we had all built those apps. Now, granted, we can blame some of it on the low resolution and the pencil and that type of stuff, and there's some truth in there. But the point remains that it's important to get our ideas out there so we can figure out if they really resonate, if they really work. All right. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I would encourage anybody to come up and share. Actually, we have a share thing. Let's see if anybody. I'm going to ask you questions first, though. So if you have any questions for me, you can put them up here. We'll see if we have time. Did the act of sketching help you think of things you hadn't thought of at first? Meaning, as you're sketching, you're like, oh, wow, that makes me think of something extra. Anybody? Go ahead. Where's my Becca? Where's my runner? Oh, would you mind? I think somebody back here had something. So the act of sketching helped you think of something you didn't think of at first.
My discovery was a low pill reminder right on the home screen.
Okay.
So that as your view, in my implementation, it was a list of upcoming medications in reverse chronological order.
Yeah.
So you're seeing, one you're going to take in 2 hours, and then the one you're going to take tonight.
Okay.
And then you get a low inventory reminder right on the home screen, so that hey, I got to call CVS or whatever.
Yeah. And so how did the act of sketching help you come up with something you hadn't thought of at first, or push your idea further?
In my point, I actually had some white space, and I figured that would be a good place to put it.
Okay. Anybody else on that one? The act of sketching helping you come up with stuff?
I was just working through figuring out medication and dosage and time periods, and then I realized as I'm working through, I would like dosage and like time period. Then I started remembering, oh wait, there's some medications I take that I'll take 2 pills the first time and then 1 and 1 and 1. So actually had to change that screen to add the ability to dosage per time period as opposed to just a single dosage in multiple time periods.
Okay. All right, what about, we got another one right behind you there, Becca.
I noticed a couple of things while I was doing the sketches. One thing was, first I wrote down all the requirements that I wanted to go into, and then once I started sketching, I realized that I had to prioritize those requirements because the main functionality has to come up in the front, and then the other functionalities which just add on should be not the first things that the user sees. So as I started sketching and I started putting all the requirements together, my first screen itself got cramped up. So then I realized, hey, I need to prioritize the main ones and then change it up. The other thing that I noticed was, it's an idea that came up, was when the reminder for the pills come up, a name or just the name of the pill isn't just required. You also have to have, say, a picture of the pill.
Yeah.
So usually, senior citizens, if they have not able to read the name properly, they might misjudged which pill they're taking. So having a database at the back end for me to maintain, say, pictures of all the pills that are out there, at least the top ones that senior citizens take, and popping out that picture along with the reminder was something that came up while I was sketching it. So those kind of ideas can help me.
That's great. And in your answer for that question was an answer to my next question was, like, did having that user voice, how did that influence your design? Does anybody have a good example of, having those quotes from the users change the way you might have designed something?
I don't need a microphone.
Yeah, this.
So, in the reminder
We'll let him go first, and then you're next, okay? Because he's really important. This guy.
thing, so in the reminder thing, I got to the done part, like I took it, but now I need to tell my son so he doesn't nag me. So I'm like, oh, I need to notify Pete, my brother Pete, not him, that it's taken. So that's one of the sketching and me going through that made me think of that.
Okay.
Sorry, Pete.
No problem.
I can have loud voice too.
Oh.
The one that said I can't read this really small writing,
Yeah.
inspired that the app should talk to you instead of dinging or having you read something.
Uh-huh.
It should say, "Hello, Sharon. It's almost 4 o'clock. Time to take your blood pressure medication."
Yeah.
And not having a beeping sound that's different than all the other beeping sounds that remind me of my Facebook notifications and things that all sound the same to me because I can't really tell the difference.
Sure. And you found a handy little loophole in my computers aren't supposed to talk directive, right? Nicely done. All right. Thank you.
So I actually saw a couple of pointers that they were giving. One is they use color box pills, and they want what button. And so cluttering, I think the app has to be simple. So it might have all big buttons explaining what the pill box. I didn't go down into exact pills. I'm assuming they are all in one box in a schedule. And for the reminders, I didn't want to use a regular notification because it probably goes back in. They probably did not see it. So my reminder was a call to them, explaining, forcing them to answer it. And then, that's triggering. That's call for action to open the app, which shows exactly what it is, what you have to do.
Yeah.
And also, if they miss the reminder did not take the pill on time, I had to think about, maybe this pill should not go with the next box. So again, that scenarios also have to draw it out, saying, okay, this pill, if you skip it, it's okay, or call caregiver, or call son, or call doctor buttons right after if you missed an important pill.
That's great. Did anybody else here pick up on the pillbox thing and do any sort of a skeuomorphic type thing? Make it somehow mimic the pillbox because that's what they're used to, that type of thing? Yeah?
One thing that came to mind is those pillboxes are usually like labeled with what day it is.
Right.
And so if you're sending a reminder to someone, like to take a pill, maybe that reminder should actually include what the day is.
Okay.
Today's Wednesday. Is the pill still in your pillbox? Table.
Okay. All right. How are we doing on time here? 2 more minutes. I want to ask one more question. Who can name something that really surprised them when their user was going through the app? They thought it was like a total no-brainer. I had this one time I developed an app and it had the filter icon that every app ever made uses the filter icon. And we found that 80% of our supposedly self-assigned tech type users didn't know what it was. So was there anything in your app that just blew your mind that somebody couldn't figure out? Anybody have? I know some people do because there was only 5 people whose people were able to successfully do this. Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. One last question. Are there any VCs in the room? Because I bet you we got some really good app ideas out here. No, okay, we'll find you. We'll find you guys some VCs. All right. It looks like we're just about out of time, so thank you very much. Thank you, Chariot Solutions, for organizing, and enjoy the rest of the conference.